Keith Instone is a user experience expert who has worked as a consultant, corporate practitioner, and professional leader. He works both as a freelancer for companies and as a volunteer for nonprofits, sharing his knowledge of how to use technology effectively. His topic today: user experience concepts, skills, and methods for strategic creatives. Would you please welcome to Shop Talk, Keith Instone.
I guess if there's only one word you remember out of all this, that word would be empathy, okay? Right, which I think is just the heart of what we do as we design experiences. And it's not just sort of, feeling that emotion kind of thing, but it's really a deep understanding of how other people think and feel, right? It involves curiosity, having curiosity and listening. There's some science to it and there's some art to it. In the IT world, we sort of evolved this term user-centered design, right, to help folks have empathy, right? Because if you think of the typical computer science graduate who really enjoys spending 12 hours in their basement in front of a computer coding, right? They don't necessarily have a lot of empathy, okay? That's great, they need to be great coders. But a lot of times in the IT industry, a lot of what I do is help folks have that empathy, remind them of yes, you're down in the weeds, but let's look at the big picture. Let's look at it from the user's point of view. There's some core creative activities that we've been talking about in the user experience area of, everybody really needs to do this: sketching, storytelling, critiquing, presenting, and facilitating, right? I think these are, skills that all of us need as creative professionals. For me, I have no art talent at all. I can't draw anything useful, but I can make boxes, and I can make arrows, and I can connect them, and I can sort of do a rough sketch like that in order to convey certain concepts, right? Where somebody says, "Oh, Keith, you drew this boxes and arrows diagram of my website. Look at all these boxes all over the place. Look at all these arrows that crisscross. Now I understand when you tell me that our website's hard to use, right? Because users are crisscrossing all the time. Hey, let me draw you another sketch where the boxes aren't as crazy and the arrows don't overlap as much. Hey, that might be a better experience for people." So even without any artistic talent, you can still do sketching. Storytelling is really, really important. I was at a meeting with a client yesterday, and the project is, to be honest, is pretty boring. We're organizing HR documents, for a company, right? Can anything be more boring than that, right? Well, it actually turns out once we got the HR folks telling us stories around how these documents are actually used, then it started getting interesting, right? So we were learning how, at this company, if you're in Indiana and you're trying to hire somebody, these are the steps you have to go through. You have to do a criminal background check. What happens if somebody doesn't pass the criminal background check, and all the other things that are really important to the business, right? So once we got into the storytelling mode, then everything got more interesting, right? And one person even said, it's like, yeah, at the beginning of the meeting, I thought we were just tagging Word documents. Boy, that is boring. But then at the end, it's like, hey, now I actually understand how this stuff will be used, how important it is to the people in the company, and how important it is for the company itself, right? And again, storytelling is, sometimes you need to show data, but usually storytelling is a much better way to connect to people and to provide some of that empathy. Again, these are things that I think all of us need to do well if we want to be creative professionals. There's some core skills that the UX folks specialize in that maybe you haven't done yet. But these are things that are really crucial. So one is studying that context and that usage, right? So for that company where I went to Australia, right, they had a lot of designers, and they were all, in theory, users will click here and drag here and touch here. Well, I just studied it for real, and it's just hard to argue with actual usage data and actual video showing it really happening. For websites, there's a lot of information organizing skills, both at a high level, right? How would we organize a large thing, but then also sometimes it's just complex information, right? How would we create a dashboard to show that sales are going up or sales are going down, right, in this interactive environment? A lot of worrying about the exact way that a user flows through a system. How do they touch, right? How big should the icon be on a smartphone, right? Well, that depends somewhat on some of the conventions, but it all has to do with how fat people's fingers are, right? And so there's some ergonomics that you have to worry about, but it's also some convention. It also has to, sometimes there's some branding requirements in it, but just, really obsessing over pinching and zooming and all that other stuff, which sometimes you sort of just dismiss as not that important, but it's really getting into those details. Of course, worrying about the layout, the icons, the colors, and all that stuff is really important. And of course, to the user, the content is what really matters most, not the user interface at all, right? If we have a great user interface, then they just focus on the content. They see the video that resonates with them. They're reading content that tells them what they want to know. So a lot of it is looking at the big picture, but also getting down into the weeds. And then for small projects, you can have one person on the team perhaps that does all this at once, right? They could be a copywriter, and they can be the visual designer, and they could be the information architect. For larger projects, then you're going to start to have specialization and a lot of teamwork involved, right? So that as somebody's organizing the big chunk of information, they're working with the folks that are organizing the small chunks. And then for my clients, most of my effort is really helping them incorporate all this practice into their corporate culture and every day, so like working with project managers. So the next time a project gets funded, you have enough folks on the team that understand user experience, that you allocate enough time. So it's not you're not doing it in 3 weeks without having enough time to actually test it with users. Up front, you just allocate 5 or 6 weeks for it. But a lot of it is communicating the design and the rationale so that people understand, whoa, this is why we've designed the navigation to work this way. Sometimes it's helping the IT folks with their software development process, because they say, well, Keith, that's a great design, but we can't build it. Well, why can't you build it? You can build anything that you want. Well, we chose this .NET platform and we can't do anything with it. Well, then let's change that, right? Because if we're hamstrung by the technology platform, then we can't meet our business goals. And a lot of time is as new technology evolves, explaining to folks what it's like from the user's point of view, so they don't just get obsessed. Hey, here's some new technology, let's make it happen, right? We can do something really cool with our phone. We can make it vibrate. Okay, cool. Should we make it vibrate? I don't know. And then a lot of integrating into the business process, right? So if we can get the marketing folks doing good user experience on a day-to-day basis, then that's just going to happen, as opposed to having to call in me, only once a year. And some other key things. So the different ways to do user research. There's a wide variety of tools that we've built up over the year. The key thing to know, though, is that sometimes you need to actually understand the behavioral aspects, right? How people are actually behaving. Other times, so those are methods at the top. Now at the bottom, you just need to know their attitude, right? So there's lots of research that shows I could actually design a system that's hard to use, but if I do the design a certain way, people feel like it's easy to use, right? So just the fact that they perform the task really fast, they may not like it, right? And other times, I could make it a pain in the butt, but somehow they like it, right? So sometimes you care more about whether they like it. Sometimes you care more about, can they get the task done in 60 seconds or less, right? Sometimes you need to do really qualitative research, like I did for the testing in Australia, right? That was mostly qualitative, but we did collect a few hard numbers for certain things. So we could say, we had 50 people overall, 80% of them could complete this one task. That's good to know. It's still small numbers. It's not 10,000 people used it, but we still had some numbers to convince the business folks that things were okay. So there's a wide range of techniques. Figuring out which one to use at the right time is really the hard part. But there's lots of different ways that we can. Again, all these are all different ways that we can help folks build up that empathy and really understand how people are using things. And then good design will follow, right? If we can do that. So if you're interested, here's some things that you can do to learn more about user experience. I would recommend buying some Rosenfeld media books. These are sort of newer books, not from a traditional publisher. They're published by somebody from the user experience field, and he's working hard to make them small books, very, very useful for practitioners, right? Not a textbook that somebody would be teaching for a course, but very targeted, very relevant topics. So you can definitely recommend those books as a starting point. And if there's only one book, right, if you can only remember one book, okay, I only have enough money to buy one book. For you guys, I think the user experience team of one would be the best one to start with, right? Because it's about how to incorporate some of these user experience techniques into the other things that you're already doing, as opposed to having a team of 20 people do it. So I would recommend that as a single book if you want to get started there. If you go online, there's all sorts of videos, there's all sorts of webinars and things that you can attend, right? So there's lots. Some folks have figured out that you can actually make money teaching people about user experience stuff. So one of them is All You Can Learn. That's just one of many. So for I forget how much, but for a monthly fee, you can watch all sorts of videos, very high quality, 90 minutes at a time on visual design, writing, all sorts of stuff. I mean, that's just a great collection. So there's definitely lots of those that you can do. You can go online. Here's some of the things that I try to read when I have some time. Putting People First, Boxes and Arrows, UX Booth, and UX Matters. I forgot to mention as well, I'll give a URL at the bottom where I've got links to all this stuff, right? So if you really do want to learn more, just check it out on my blog.